Pick up where we left off in Chapter 6, Part 1. If we're looking at this drug, or this order, right, it's 0.12 grams by mouth daily AM. How many tablets of this nitrate will the patients receive? That AM means every morning. So that 0.12 grams is still every one dose or one day. So that's okay. If we look, they're asking us how many tablets. So we look at our drug label and find that there's 60 milligrams per tablet. The issue is we're in grams. So I need to first convert to milligrams. I know there's 1,000 milligrams in every gram. And then I can use that strength to say that there's 60 milligrams in every one tablet. My grams cancel out. My milligrams cancel out. When I multiply straight across the top, I end up with 120. And then across the bottom, I have 60. Notice that's tablets per dose. When I actually do the division out, because I care about one dose, I find that there's 2 tablets per one dose. If I look at this one, the physician orders a drug, 0.8 grams IM, so intramuscular, once a week. Determine the number of milliliters your patient would receive in a week. So if I look at that rate from the order, I'm getting 0.8 grams every 1 week. If I look at what I'm trying to find, I want milliliters in a week. So I don't need to change the denominator, but I do need to go from grams to milliliters. If I look at the drug strength, it's 400 milligrams per milliliter. So I first need to go from grams to milligrams. I know in 1 gram, there's 1,000 milligrams. Then I can use that drug strength. I know 400 milligrams goes in the denominator, so I can get them to cancel out. And per milliliter means per 1 milliliter. When I do my 0.8 times 1,000, I get 800 milliliters over 400 weeks, because I haven't canceled out weeks. But I only care about in 1 week, so when I divide them, I know that it's 2 milliliters per week. If I look at another one, it says the order is for this drug, 10 milligrams by mouth in 2 divided doses. How many teaspoons should you administer for the first dose? So, first thing I'm going to do is find 1 dose. If I look, I've got 10 milligrams in 2 divided doses. So I'm going to do 10 milligrams divided by 2 to find that there's really 5 milligrams per dose. Then that's what I'm going to use in my dimensional analysis. 5 milligrams per 1 dose. Now they were asking for teaspoons. So this time I'm going from that solid form, milligrams, to that liquid, teaspoons. If I look at the drug label, they tell me there's 1 milligram per milliliter. So I can put 1 milligram in my denominator and 1 milliliter up top. If you remember, we said it helped to memorize how many teaspoons were in a milliliter to make our lives a little bit easier. And if we do that, but I forget that, so let's go the long way, just in case you also blank out on a test. If we think about our 1 milliliter on our formula sheet, we know that there's 30 milliliters in 1 fluid ounce. And we know that there's 1 fluid ounce in 2 tablespoons, but we want to go to teaspoons. And we know that tablespoons and teaspoons are related because there's 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon. So we need to make sure our tablespoons cancel out. We get our 3 teaspoons up top. If we do this, milliliters cancel out, fluid ounces cancel out, tablespoons cancel out. So when we multiply straight across the top, we end up with 30 teaspoons. Straight across the bottom, we have 30 doses. So when we divide, we know that's really 1 teaspoon per dose. And like we said before, if you had memorized how many milliliters were in a teaspoon, we could avoid all of this extra stuff. Now, we also need to be careful with dosages based on the size of the patient. Most of the time, our patient's weight will be expressed in kilograms, or they'll give it to us in pounds and we'll have to convert to kilograms. So if we look at something like 5 grams per kilogram, that means the patient should receive 5 grams for each kilogram of their body weight. So if we look at this, we're ordering Dilantin, 15 milligrams per kilogram, a loading dose by mouth, then 300 milligrams per day. That D stands for day. For the loading dose, how many milligrams of this anticonvulsant would you administer to a patient weighing 75 kilograms? Now, we haven't talked about loading doses before. That means that we're giving the patient one larger dose typically at the beginning, or sometimes a smaller dose, and then we're going to continue some other dose long term. So if we look at this, they're only asking us about the loading dose. So I'm only going to focus on the 15 milligrams per kilogram. And they're asking us how many milligrams should we administer to a patient weighing 75 kilograms. So usually when we're dealing with patient weight, that's what we start with. So I'm going to start with my 75 kilograms. And then I know in 1 kilogram, there's 15 milligrams, or our patient is receiving 15 milligrams for every 1 kilogram of their body weight. When we multiply straight across, we get 1,125 milligrams because those kilograms totally canceled out. That is how large the loading dose would be. If we look at this next one, we're ordering our drug 2 milligrams per pound per day for 10 days. We're going to determine how many milliliters of this antibiotic you would administer to a patient who weighs 120 pounds. So remember, when they say that administer, that's our key that we're looking at 1 dose. So I'm going to start with this 120 pounds. If we look at what they're telling us about the patient in the order, they're telling us we should give the patient 2 milligrams per pound. So the good news is the weights are both in pounds. We don't have to do any conversions there. So what they're asking for is how many milliliters. So I'm going to start with the order and say that for every 1 pound, the patient's going to get 2 milligrams. But now we need to get to milliliters. Our pounds canceled out, and we're going to use our drug strength for that. We have 25 milligrams, so they cancel out, in every 5 milliliters. When we multiply straight across here, we end up with 1,200 over 25. The only units left are milliliters. And when we divide out, we get 48 milliliters. So this patient's going to get 48 milliliters of this drug.